Beekeeping in 2025 is shaping up to be full of surprises, some exciting and some not so exciting. And if you think 2024 was tough on beekeepers, wait until you hear about what I'm predicting for 2025. But this video is not just about predictions, it's about real solutions to real problems that we're going to be seeing in 2025. Hey everybody, David Burns. I'm pumped. Super excited to be with you here today, friend. Thanks for joining me. I've got a free checklist for beekeepers, a guide for 2025 to kind of summarize what I'm going to be saying here and help you make fewer mistakes and be ready for what we're going to be challenged with in 2025. Now let's jump right into today's video today. We're going to be talking about some of the problems that I'm seeing that we have to really crack down on and have more vigor and be more detailed and focused if we want our bees to do good. The first one is the impact of the varroa destructor mite. I'm going to be making a video because I have been listening to you, and I know that so many of you in my comments have said, you know, I need to know what treatment to use. I need to know when to use it. I need to know how to administer the treatment. So many questions. So this week, I'm going to be putting a video together and I'm going to be revealing the way that you can approach your problem of trying to figure out how to treat for mites. You know, what time of the year, how big is your hive, do you have a honey flow or honey supers on, what's the temperatures and all that. I'm going to really take you along and show you exactly how you can work through this step by step. So stay tuned for this week. I'll be producing that video. But I just want to share with you right now, we do have to really take on the varroa destructor mite in 2025. I don't really care how you do it. If you want to be an oxalic vaporizer guy or gal and you just want to get the best vaporizer you can and you want to crystallize some oxalic acid and you want to do it according to the label, but as often as you can get away with it, and you want to just scorch mites all year long, hey, do it. Stay with the label and get rid of the mites. If you're a Formic Pro person and you love how Formic Pro, which is formic acid, kills below the cap cells, go after it. Stay within the label, but go after mites with Formic Pro. If you're an Apivar, ApiGuard, HopGuard, if you're all the other ones, whatever it is. And I think it's important that we rotate. And I'll be talking about that too, because I think it's important that we don't just stick with one treatment. That's a little bit risky when we do that the mite could develop a resistance to that treatment. Maybe it's highly unlikely with some of our acids, but we still wonder. We can be aggressive with the varroa destructor mite with a lot of IPM management techniques, integrated pest management, such as using a green drone comb, breaking a queen's brood cycle, using powdered sugar dusting, whatever method you use. I know some of you don't like to use chemicals or treatments. I understand that. But here's what you got to do. Got to stay with it a little bit harder. You got to really get a notebook out. You got to write down regular tests, how often you're testing, and what kind of mite results you're getting, and making sure you're getting those levels under control. We don't want more than 2 or 3 mites per 100 bees. And so by testing our mites, we can get a pretty good handle on how we're doing. And when we see them expanding out beyond that, we need to take a real aggressive effort to get those mites under control. Please understand, don't keep your mites under control just once or twice a year. You need to keep them under control every day. And so you're testing about every month to get an idea of how many mites you have, and then you're treating if needed after that mite test. Another thing we can do is use more mite-resistant stock of queens. We've been working on this for decades. Developing a queen and her offsprings are more resistant to the varroa destructor mite. You've heard some of the names before, VS Sage, ankle biters. There's so many different ways that you could pursue buying a stock, a breed, I guess a queen that they tout that is better handling mites. So pursue that as well. Even though you can never get 100%, you can't buy a queen and, you know, she just gets all her offspring, gets rid of the mites. We're not there yet, but it is a percentage, whatever that is, that it helps. So I think it's important to not only use treatments, IPM methods, I think it's important to throw a queen in there that shows some resistance to mites too. That's what I'm saying. We need to really go after these mites in 2025. I think we're going to have a lot more survival, and a lot of you want your bees to get through the winter. Hey, here's the deal. A lot of people say, David, do I need to wrap for winter? Do I need to feed in the winter? What kind of foods do I need to feed in the winter time? Which way should they face in the winter time? Before you ask any of those questions, you got to really feel very good about all summer long keeping your mite levels down. Because if you didn't keep your mite levels down, all of those other things will help very little. Now, a second problem that I've seen in 2024, and I think we're going to see this in some of the scientific studies and research that's being done, and I've heard some very prominent beekeepers talk about this, is that in 2024, 2025, when we lost 65, 75% of the bees in the US, some people are pointing the finger at the extreme weather challenges that we had in that season. You go back in time, we had a hurricane. That most hurricanes stay pretty close to shore. They come on to the Midlands and they kind of die out, right? Well, we had hurricanes that would come and climb all the way in and do significant flooding and damages way up into the US. And so a lot of beehives were destroyed in places where hurricanes never made it that far before. And not only was that a problem, but the results of that much flooding did a lot of damage to crops that bees would normally go to, flooding, where I guess foraging was ruined for bees for the rest of the year. So we had an extreme event like that. We had other extreme events. We've had plenty of fires where bees were destroyed in fires. And that is sad. I remember hearing about fires out west, fires in Florida, where honeybees were burned and destroyed. And again, the more fires we have, the more it burns up the natural habitat that bees are going to for nectar sources. So, and then, yeah, we have to admit we've had a terrible winter. We saw cold weather way deep into the south. Some states reporting record snowfalls in the deep south. So we've had extreme weather this year, okay? And so extreme weather has an extreme way of being hard on bees. And so I think we have to be more aware of how to deal with these changing weather climates, because I believe 2025 could be a very challenging season. If it turns out to be like 2024, we've got a lot of challenges ahead. We could possibly have droughts, hot weather, or lots of rain and flooding, and again, hurricanes and all. That all could take place in 2025. So let me give you some solutions how we're going to deal with this in 2025, this extreme weather, if it does happen. First, be ready for an early warm-up. It really does look like this is the year that it's going to warm up early, and I don't know, maybe stay that way. Who knows, right? Who can predict the weather? But my trees are blooming, which is crazy. Leaves are starting to show green leaves already, and now it's the last day of March. Who knows? But anyway, I really think what we need to prepare for, your solution right now, is all hands on deck with swarm control. Some of you further south in the US are already catching swarms, and you need to have plenty of equipment on hand, something to put them in. You need to have a box in your car, like a 5-frame nuke or a deep box in your truck or car. No matter where you go, going back forth to work or whatever, you need to have that in your car, because one time I was traveling down the road, had my equipment in my truck, and I saw a swarm hanging from a 4-way stop sign. I pulled up, I stopped at the 4-way stop sign, looked both ways, looked back, and saw a swarm on a stop sign hanging down. So I pulled over there and captured the swarm because I had everything in my truck. So get all the equipment that you need now and get ready for possibly a crazy swarm season. And then that kind of takes us in the summer. I think it's important that we realize it could be a hot summer. We always want to be prepared for a lot of heat in the summer. So think through your summer plans, how to keep your bee cool. Your bees need to be cooled with either some shading, a water source, a way that you can water your bees maybe on your property or in your apiary with some bird feeders with rocks in it. Find a way to keep a water source in case it does get really hot. Remember, bees gather water and they bring it into the hive when it's really hot, and they use it for evaporative cooling. So you need to have a water source. Be thinking ahead of time for that. Of course, ventilation in the summertime is important. Might want to go to a screen bottom board, or certainly open up the bottom entrance more. Might have to put a little ventilation at the top. You need a way to get those the airflow, get some of that stale air out of the hive. Now, this is not being talked about a lot. I'm going to say it. It's a little odd. I think it's odd when I heard it at a conference. It hit me like, huh? Really? I've never tried that. But what about insulating our hives in the summertime? I know, that's what I heard. And so I thought, well, I insulate my house to keep my air conditioning in the house, so maybe that would help, you know? So I'm going to take a few hives this year, and I'm going to insulate them all year long. And I'm going to keep them insulated all year long and see if they perform a little bit different in the heat than the hives that aren't insulated. Now, you wouldn't normally think about insulating bees in the heat, but in all fairness, in their natural habitat, a big old tree with the, rotted center out of it, it has a lot of insulation if you consider how thick that tree is from the outside of the bark all the way through the wood to where the bees are. So there is that bit of insulation. So anyway, maybe you want to consider that. I haven't tested that out yet, but it was suggested all year long to keep your hives insulated. So that might help with the heat control as well. Which brings us, while we're on the subject of insulation, again, a lot of talk is being said about insulating, and I like the idea of insulating. I've always said that if you have a choice to insulate a hive, it's not a bad idea, especially if it's a weak hive. I don't insulate all my hives, but I think if you're in a place where it's windy, like I am, and you don't have a wind block, insulation obviously is going to help. But there's a lot more, I guess, in the beekeeping community, there's a lot, the needle's bending toward insulating all the way around. That more people are leaning toward thinking that that might be a better plan. And I think I am going to start insulating my hives because we just have brutal wind. We can insulate our hives if it's going to be colder in the wintertime. We need to feed them in the wintertime. I use my winter bee kind boards. A lot of you buy those from us each year. And that's another way to keep food on the hive in the wintertime. If they run out of their own food, there's something there for them to eat. And of course, ventilating the hive, that's a debatable issue. Some people feel like you don't need to ventilate if you insulate really well. And other people like some passive ventilation to help a little bit of that stale moisture get out of the hive from the top or the middle or something like that. And so you need to really be thinking how to counteract these extreme temperatures or extreme weather events that we may see. Now, those of you that live in flooded areas where it could be flooded, you need to think through that. Get your bees out of there before it floods. You might not want to keep your bees in there at all. Okay, I've lost bees in flooding before in Illinois. And so you need to be careful putting your bees somewhere where maybe there's a creek nearby that's never risen up out of its banks, but it might. So let's be careful. Another way we need to be prepared for the weather is we need to be ready for maybe a very big drought, either late summer or in the fall. And I think it's important that we feed our bees in the fall, build those bees up for winter physiology. That's something I've taught in a lot of my videos in the past 15 years. I've been really hammering feed your bees in the fall, 1-to-1 sugar water with our additives to build up bees of winter physiology. You go into winter with more bees. So a lot of people lost their bees in the fall. So I want you to heavily feed your bees as soon as the drought happens in the summertime, so they'll be really more fit to face fall and to face the challenges of that fall weather. I have 2 more problems and 2 more solutions for them and a bonus tip, so stay with me. Also, I want to encourage you guys to please join me for my live stream. We have so many people that join, hundreds of beekeepers every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, so I hope you'll check us out. This Thursday night, I'm talking about basically April tips, spring tips for beekeeping. You don't want to miss that. Also, take a moment right now and leave a comment. Tell me what you see could be a problem in 2025 and what would be the solution that you would use to kind of counteract the problems that you might be facing in beekeeping in 2025. Now let's get back into the next problem I'm seeing, and that is an increase in robbing due to nectar shortages. That's right. You know, robbing occurs when the nectar is depleted. So if we do have droughts or flooding or whatever might destroy flowers and plants and trees and all that have the flowers on them that bees love to go to, if that gets knocked out from the severe weather, then our bees are going to be robbing each other because they're starving out. So we need to be ready to counteract robbing this year. Now, how do you do that? Well, first, it's important to realize that you need to have a plan, have something ready to be placed on your entrance to stop robbing. Now, we sell a really nice robbing screen, and you can put that on the front of your hive before robbing starts. It works really well. Have that on hand while the nectar flow is still going on, because robbing start about the time the nectar flow ends. And so have those on hand. You got to be proactive in beekeeping. Don't wait until robbing starts and then try to solve the problem. Solve the problem before it starts. Prevent the problem by putting on those robber screens just as the nectar flow starts winding down. You can tell the entrance isn't so busy anymore. And then you think, okay, summer's about over. I don't see clover anymore. I don't have much out there in the way of nectar, so I'm going to put my robber screens on. Be proactive. Another way to reduce robbing is to go ahead and take the weak colonies, the ones that get robbed, and combine them with stronger colonies that can protect themselves better against robbing, especially if you reduce the entrance on those big colonies. So robbers have to fight their way in and don't have a big opening. But you can combine the weaker hives with your larger hives. That's another way to be proactive about robbing. Another way, don't feed from the entrance. If you use like a Boardman entrance feeder in your entrance during the fall or late summer, when there's no nectar available out there, it's inevitable that bees will smell that nice, wonderful sugar water that you're feeding a hive in the entrance, and they'll go in there and rob it out. Always feed internally, either a top feeder or a frame feeder, so bees can't detect that sugar water being fed to your bees. And the fourth problem that I'm predicting probably is getting worse, and we're going to see more of it in 2025, and just less foraging that's available. A lot of foraging places are being turned into parking lots, stores, buildings, community centers, neighborhoods. We're losing just the natural forage that we used to have so much of 10, 20, 100 years ago. And so we need to help our bees out. We can't keep our bees in a city made up mostly of asphalt and concrete and buildings and malls and expect our bees to do well, right? So one of the ways that we can help with that is that we can feed our bees. Now, I know if you're like me, you would rather bees go out onto natural flowers than to be fed. Who wouldn't? That's how it's supposed to be, right? But if it's nothing available, rather than see your bees die of starvation, you got to feed your bees. So be ready to feed your bees. If that turns out to be a drought or something in the middle of summer, midsummer, late summer, you're ready to feed your bees. Another way you might combat that, especially if you have the ability to plant a lot of the plants that bees like to go to, that would be great. So let's always be thinking about providing more for our bees in the way of some of the great nutritional pollen that comes from plants that we give our bees. Even if you don't have land to plant anything on, maybe you can encourage people that you know in your area that they do have land, and you can encourage them to plant pollinator-friendly plants on these open fields and places where you can plant crops or a garden or something, and just help all pollinators, not just honeybees, but all the pollinators out. And I promise a bonus tip. Here's my bonus tip. And it's all about, in 2025, all beekeepers really need to work hard at developing a critical thinking mindset. We need to be problem solvers, and our bees are going to be presented with a lot of challenges, and we're the ones that are keeping our bees. We have to be on top of things in order to solve those problems. So it's important that you stay educated, stay up to date, keep your mind open. Don't get locked into one position. And I know a lot of times we get locked into maybe a bee club and they have only one way of viewing things, or you get a mentor and they only have just one way of viewing things. You can get very close-minded and miss out on a lot of opportunities that could have been better for your bees, but you got locked into a closed mindset. So keep your mind open and stay alert, stay educated, and keep watching my channel. And you can have a creative way to be a critical thinker, and you can solve beekeeping problems yourself. I really do feel that 2025 is going to throw us, as beekeepers, going to throw us a lot of challenging stuff. But with these tools and the proper mindset, I think we're going to do a lot better than we did last year. Now, I did mention I have a beekeeping guide for 2025 that I want you to download. I'll leave a link to it in my description below. Click on that and it will be a checklist for things mostly we've mentioned here, but maybe a few more things that you can follow to kind of check off, make sure you're ready for the challenges of 2025. There are so many mistakes that beekeepers can make. I've made my share of mistakes. I'd love to see you avoid mistakes, especially the ones I've made, because I'm here to help you avoid them. Watch this video right here. I'll tell you about the mistakes you need to avoid this spring. See you guys over there.